for the third year running as a country. We would, of course, not want to continue in that category or in that situation. So we want to spread the knowledge, not only to the athletes, but all Kenyans who are concerned, who are ready to support. And I want to urge and I want to appeal to all the Kenyans that we support this program and get rid of these doping issues completely. Because doping does not only finish an athlete's career, it also affects the health of the person, that person who is affected.
And in studio with me for this conversation, I have Barnabas Korir, who is the chair of Youth Development Programs at Athletics Kenya, Julius Ndegwa, a former athlete, and the current organizing secretary of Professional Athletics Association of Kenya, as well as Sadiq Shaban, who's a veteran sports journalist. I shall also be speaking to the CEO of Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAK, Jafta Rugut. We shall be hearing from the guests shortly, but first, our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, is on standby from the CBD. And a good evening to you, Sophia. It's good to see you. This case of doping is really becoming a serious crisis in Kenya's sport, isn't it?
Good evening, Sharon. Indeed, the doping spotlight is once again on Kenya. 28-year-old Asbel Kiprop, world and Olympic champion in 1500 meters, last week being found to have failed a doping test by the Athletics Integrity Unit, AIU. He was found to have a blood booster substance that's banned in his system. However, Kiprop has claimed that there was interference with the samples that were taken, and that in fact money was extorted from him as well. This matter is currently before the disciplinary department and committee of the IAAF, so it will continue to be heard, and all claims that have been made and counter allegations as well to be heard and concluded. But Sharon, this is not the first time we're seeing this kind of doping allegations and athletes, elite athletes, if you like, failing doping tests. We've seen the Olympic champion in the past, Jemima Sumgong. You've also seen Rita Jepto, who's a Boston Marathon champion, also in this red when it comes to athletics in Kenya. And just looking back in some of the statistics that have come out in the last 4 years, almost 50 athletes, some elite like the ones I've mentioned, some lesser known, having been found to fail in as far as doping tests are concerned, that there are more and more individuals taking these banned substances. And remember, Kenya is known around the world. She has made and carved out a niche and made her name in as far as long distance running, this pedigree that has become huge for brand Kenya, one of the hugest ways in which Kenya has been marketed in the global scene, seeing our athletes shine out there and bring pride back to the country. But now more and more such cases are disconcerting. And remember, there had been this push and pull between the Kenyan government and the authorities with the IAAF as well as WADA over legislation and coming up with mechanisms to ensure those that are involved in the abuse of these substances are apprehended, and there's deterrence as well as far as punitive measures being put in place. So in 2016, we saw the anti-doping agency being created, coming into operation. However, this after Kenya had failed to meet quite a number of deadlines and timelines set by the World Anti-Doping Agency. So this latest incident, one again that takes that spotlight back. And remember, we have in the Rift Valley region, whether it's home of champions, the source of champions, the city of champions, some of those areas, we hear those words coming and being termed and referred in that way because of the great athletes we've seen come from there. And in the past, we've seen some of those that have worked with athletes opining that it's an education issue and awareness when it comes to these athletes not being made aware of the implication of some of the practices they may engage in, that they're easily culpable, easily manipulated or lied to, misled into getting into some of these practices. However, Athletics Kenya in the past has come out to say they're doing a lot as far as raising an awareness with those in that circle of athletics, and I'm sure our guest in studio, a steady panel we have there, will be weighing in into this as well. But Sharon, corruption and bribery is also thriving, whether it's athletes being told, okay, if you're found capable with this doping menace, then we will make this go away, so worry not. Is it that pressure is mounting for these athletes to be able to still make the cut? Making it to Team Kenya in some of this World Championship is quite the tall order, because you have so many coming out for the trials, or is it organized sort of mechanizations that we are seeing, as has been alleged by some athletes, that they're individuals out to ruin Kenya's name? That is out and up for discussion, but these are some of the issues that are concerning many in the athletics arena. And of course, the country in general should be concerned for a huge sport that has brought such great pride to us. Sharon.
Right. Many thanks, Sophia Wanuna, just raising critical issues that I shall just in a moment be engaging my panel here in studio about. And of course, many are concerned that this is a sport that has brought a lot of glory to the country and now is becoming really tainted on the international scene. But before we get into that discussion with my panel, we just want to take a look at some of the recent cases of doping that have stained Kenya's image. And we shall be taking a look at that on our super wall. And we had that case by Matthew Kisorio, who is a Kenyan long-distance runner. And Matthew Kipkoech Kisorio tested positive for steroids at the 2012 Kenyan Athletics Championship. And Kisorio came out to give a long and detailed description of his blood doping and steroid regime, also blaming medical staff behind the system and claiming that many fellow Kenyans were also using illegal performance-enhancing procedures. We also have that case of Rita Chepto, who's Kenya's multi-marathon champion, that was handed a 4-year ban after she tested positive for EPO, which is a human growth hormone, in September 2014. And Athletics Kenya had handed her a 2-year ban from sports for the violation. And however, on the 26th of October 2016, the Court of Arbitration for Sport upheld an appeal from the IAAF against the leniency of the 2-year ban given by Athletics Kenya. We also have that case of Viola Chelagat Kimeto, who is a Kenyan marathoner, who came third at the Athens Marathon in 2012. And Viola tested positive for noradosterone during the Macau Galaxy Entertainment International Marathon that was held in December 2013. We also have that case, you'll remember, just last year of Jemima Sumgong, who was the London Marathon and Olympic champion, who tested positive for the banned EPO in an out-of-competition test carried out by the IAAF in February 2017. And Sumgong's appeal was dismissed after she presented documents purporting to be from Kenyatta National Hospital, and the hospital disowned during her sports dispute hearing. That was just a very recent case. We had that last year. And another case that we saw was that of Joyce Chemutai Kiplimo, 26-year-old half-marathoner, who returned a positive test for noradosterone, a banned substance that was detected in her urine during the test. And her personal best of 1 hour and 10 minutes during the Yangzhou half-marathon in April 2013 was nullified since the test done after the race tested positive. And the latest case, of course, which now has us really revisiting this big issue tonight, is that of Asbel Kiprop. Of course, the case is still under investigations, and the track star claims he was the victim of extortion by World Anti-Doping Agency WADA officials on the day that he reportedly failed a drugs test. And the Olympic and 3-time world 1,500-meter champion further alleges that he was offered an IAAF ambassadorial role if he admitted to doping. And Asbel said, of course, he made that public statement soon after this report was made, said that he can prove that he was clean following British media reports that he had tested positive for EPO. And I shall be having that conversation with my guests in studio tonight. Let me just introduce them. With me is Barnabas Korir, who is the chair of youth development programs at the Athletics Kenya. Kenya. I also have Julius Ndegwa, who's a former athlete and also the current organizing secretary of Professional Athletics Association of Kenya, and Sadiq Shaban, who is a veteran sports journalist. And let's just start with that case of Asbel Kiprop. And Sadiq, I'll start with you because I know you have closely been following this case and even had an interview with Asbel a few days ago. What's your take on this case, given that we've seen a lot of questions that Asbel himself has raised, questions of corruption, allegations and whatnot? What's your take on this case?
First of all, thank you very much for having me, and it's good to be back on KTN. The case by Asbel Kiprop certainly got a lot of us by surprise, because nobody had anticipated at this time that Kenya would be dealing with a case of an elite athlete at this level, falling afoul with anti-doping rule violation. That as it may, I'll be hesitant to go into the details, the merits of this particular case, because it's something that is under active investigation and it will be prejudicial to talk about it. But nevertheless, it doesn't stop us from looking at the bigger picture about what it is that Kenya finds itself again after going through a very tumultuous period from particularly 2013 up to this time. It's been about 5 years of nothing but progressive conversation about doping and anti-doping rule violation. You have rightly said and pointed out a number of Kenyan athletes. Now, these at the elite level are the cases that are known. But perhaps unbeknownst to many, there are so many others who are not at this level, the professional and elite level, that have also been found to have broken the rules. And at this particular time in Kenya, I know about 20 or 30 athletes are currently under investigation, active investigation. Now, these are not athletes at the elite level. These are athletes who are up and coming, and their cases are either being handled by a local tribunal here or at the international level. So the case of Asbel Kiprop certainly is a wake-up call, as it were, because the Athletics Integrity Unit is now charging him with EPO, recombinant erythropoietin, which is a serious form of doping, and that should actually then take this country back to the drawing board and start questioning everything, including the role played by the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, what Athletics Kenya is doing, but importantly, do our athletes know what they are doing? And in terms of the rules and regulations that govern the issue of doping control, particularly in athletics. But I would also hasten to add that this is just athletics. What about football? What about hockey? What about rugby? What about this other sport that perhaps the focus isn't too much on?
Right. And you pose a very good question that I want now to pose to Barnabas Korir from, the Youth Developments Program at the Athletics Kenya. And Barnabas, are our athletes really aware and, have they been sensitized enough concerning doping and, the kind of heavy ramifications that come with that?
Yes, I think Athletics Kenya and also the Doping Agency of Kenya, ADAC, they started about 2 years ago when ADAC was established, and they have been in the forefront of sensitizing the athletes in various regions across the country. They have also, Athletics Kenya has particularly centered their interest around Rift Valley, Nandi area, Uasin-Gishu, of course, Nyahururu also. And the process of sensitization is going on, and I think that so far, the cooperation between Athletics Kenya and the Doping Agency of Kenya has actually borne fruit, and you find that most of the work being done has been quite successful. And I think if we continue like that, eventually we will be able to eradicate this problem facing this country.
Right. And Julius, as a former athlete, maybe you can talk to us about how you think we got here. I mean, this is a relatively new concept in the country. About 10 years ago, we were not hearing cases of doping by Kenyan athletes, and it was really a glorious, kind of a sport. What do you think are some of the factors that are contributing to this alarming surge in the use of, performance-enhancing drugs?
Okay, thank you, Sharon. The fact is, these athletes are not being told the truth. I think there's some that we call, I remember in 2014, we as PAC, or athletes of this country, we formed an association strictly to make sure that this fight is gone. But the problem is that we never have serious people who can support that. I think from 2014 to date, Sharon, if we were serious as a federation, as a government of this country, as athletes, this is something that we will be saying doping was there. But now you see it has affected every athlete, even the people that we cannot expect to be caught on doping. But I think, again, athletes never took this thing as a serious to them, because when we launched the bill 2016 and it was accepted by the president, nobody even bothered to sensitize these athletes, Sharon, because I remember we wanted to do away with this menace once and for all. But the problem is that nobody, not even the government, the then government, not today, the then government bothered to put this into details and tell the athlete that this, what you are doing is a criminal, is a crime. If you commit yourself in these vices or you take these vices, unfortunately, you're going to be jailed or to be suspended from running. But because we have more than 15,000 serious athletes in this country, Sharon, but you find most of them are not informed well. We find that most of them just wake up in the morning, go for training, but even the coaches that are around them, they never have time to speak to them word by word. And I remember when I talked about sensitizing them, I gave an opinion of at least writing these medicines in vernacular so that an athlete can understand this language. Because if you talk about EPO, even myself, I cannot explain what EPO is, but you find that athletes can go ahead and take this EPO by the directives of the doctor. But you find that whenever things go haywire, everybody run away from this athlete. Like recent thing I saw from Asbel Kiprop, he was the least man, everybody would suspect that this guy can use this EPO. But if you go into deep details, he has a coach, he has a manager, he has a federation in this country. And this man is a man who has brought growth to this country. Fighting that, now he has got to that problem. Nobody is talking about Asbel. Nobody wants to associate with him. It is because we have given little knowledge to the people that will require more knowledge than the way we could expect. Most athletes in the village areas, actually they don't understand. Whenever they want to take medicine, which criteria should they use? And whom should they consult first? Is it their coach? Is it their training mate? Or is it the doctor? Here we have things you should consider, Sharon. First of all, we have athletes who have little knowledge in terms of education and other things. Sorry to say that. That is the fact. But these athletes still need to be given much knowledge about this menace, because we have thousands and thousands of these medicines that even most of people don't understand. Like if you talk of a syrup, can you imagine syrup can cause a doping case? And a syrup, that is something that you can control our cold and other things. But you see, these are the things that the ADAC, when it was formed in 2016, these are the things they should be doing, but they are doing less than what is supposed to do. And I want to challenge the CEO, ADAC, for once. Because when this thing was formed, ADAC, what was it for? Is it for judgment? Was it for charging an athlete? Or was it for sensitization first? Because you cannot say you want to judge somebody without even telling that person the dangers of doing one so-and-so. The federation also, and I think Mr. Barnaba Koru is there as chairman. How much have they done as a federation to make sure that these athletes, not only the top one, because I remember 2010, when Matthew Kesori was caught, and Wilson Erupe, they invited the best athletes in Eldoret, which is wrong. I challenge that. When the former president was there, and the former secretary general was there, how can you invite the top athletes as if those people who are upcoming are not athletes of this country? They could have at least put this in the media, in the leaflets, everywhere, in the social medias, to sensitize these young athletes and make sure that everybody understands the language. Right. Because you cannot say this language everybody could understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Sadiq, you've been covering, sports news for a very long time, and I want you to weigh in on that. How do you think we got here? Because these cases are really, rising at an alarming rate. Is it that now systems are working and we are now able to see that, these athletes are actually not running clean, or is it something that is growing? What is fueling this vice?
Well, Sharon, I have an answer for you. We are 27 years late as a country to be able to get our act together on the menace of doping. And this is something that the administrators have known since 1991, when one of, in fact, Kenya's now an older generation athlete first failed an out-of-competition doping test. John Ngugi is a 5-time cross-country champion, was the first Kenyan in modern-day athletics since the establishment of the World Championship in 1981 to have fallen an doping test. This is way back in 1991. We have never had anything about doping control actively on the ground since that time. Now, we are talking about a whole generation of an athlete who is as old as Asbel Kiprop. So we are now rushing to deal with this problem. It's only 2 years since the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya was created in this country. And that even came about because Kenya risked being excluded, from the 2016 Olympic Games in Rio. We were operating on fringes of going the Russian way. But that as it may be, we are looking at a complex problem, a problem that cannot be said to be white or black, because even sports administrators themselves have been entrapped in all of this. As you're speaking, the former Chief Executive Officer of Athletics Kenya, Isaac Mwangi, was said to have solicited for bribe from 2 Kenyan athletes, the only athletes who failed doping test during the 2015 World Athletics Championship in China. There were only 2 athletes who failed doping tests, and those were Kenyans. And we also had a case that's been going on for 3 years involving the former Secretary General of Athletics Kenya, Mr. David Okeyo, and the late Chairman, Asbel Kiprop, and the former Treasurer, Mr. Kenywa, who are said to be part of a complex. Accusation here is a complex corruption within the system, which encompasses the issue of doping. So the point is, and I just want to refer to what Julius has said. Right. I know from the years in this profession that Kenyan athletes are not in charge of their own anti-doping welfare. Many of our top-level athletes are members of what we call international testing pool. So that means a person like David Rudisha, a person like Mercy Cherono, a person like Jana Chepkosgei could be tested for doping control anywhere. It doesn't have to be Kenya. It could be tested in Melbourne. It could be tested in Gold Coast, Australia, in Doha Diamond League. So the issue of doping has now gone global. But what have we done on the ground? There was a question about the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. They have been running a lot of campaigns, sensitization, and outreach events over the past 2 years. But the question is, has it been enough? Many people would say it's not, but at least there's something going on. The veracity of it and the effectiveness of it would perhaps be vindicated in the fullness of time. Importantly, there is something called ADAMS in athletics. That is the Anti-Doping Administration and Management Tool. Now, for the uncultured, this means that any athlete that is under the international testing pool needs to declare their whereabouts for a whole year, and it's usually declared quarterly in advance. And the important part of this, which has a relationship with the kind of situation we find ourselves now, is that each athlete is supposed to declare 1 hour every day, which is a free hour for testing. So that means if you declared 7 to 8 o'clock, that is the time that any anti-doping control officer could turn up without any notice to be able to take your samples, whether urine or otherwise. And a lot of Kenyan athletes are having these ADAMS, or what we call the whereabouts system, managed by them, by their agents, most of whom are based in Europe. So you ask a Kenyan athlete, do you know anything about your whereabouts? He said, well, at the beginning of the season, I gave it to my manager who is filling it for me. Many of these athletes need a lot of education. But we understand their challenge in terms of education and exposure. But unfortunately, most of the business here is conducted in English and in very technical language, especially in the issue of anti-doping control. So there is really no excuse here. We have to ensure that our athletes know what they are doing. And a couple of things they keep signing all about town isn't so healthy. Julius mentioned something about over-the-counter medication, or anything that could interfere with their health. Well, in athletics, goodness, there's something called therapeutic use exemption, TUE. That means if an athlete is feeling, unwell at any point in time, they have to declare that they are taking or intending with prescription to take a certain medication for a period of time. Now, again, this must be declared in advance and uploaded on that whereabouts. But we find a lot of Kenyan athletes, including those who are not at the elite level, now falling afoul with something it's really about knowledge. And in law, I'm afraid, ignorance is no defense. So we find ourselves really dealing with things that are so mundane. You will not believe the kind of cases that are on the ground. For instance, you may find an athlete say, look, I was feeling, I had a small cold. So you know what? I took this medication. So you ask somebody, do you have any prescription for this? You say, no. I simply went over the counter and I asked the pharmacist that I'm feeling a little bit uncomfortable, so they gave me this. But that medicine could actually contain substances that are banned. And we remember the case of Munyasia, the boxer, Kenyan boxer who went to the 2004 Olympic Games in Athens, who had been chewing miraa, on his flight or prior to. The moment he landed in Athens, there was an immediate anti-doping test, and he was found to have violated. And he was on the next plane back home. Now, the question is, we see our footballers chewing miraa every other time. We see players, some of whom we engage and interact with, freely abusing alcohol, freely chewing miraa, and taking other substances which are against the anti-doping, which are banned under the World Anti-Doping Agency Code. So Kenya will have to do quite a lot. Our levels of exposure and education among our athletes is actually a big undoing. And just like corruption, doping isn't going anywhere soon.
Right. Okay, great insights, really, gentlemen, and very crucial issues are coming out here, right from the need to sensitize athletes on, even what they need to know and sensitize them on language they can understand. And both you, Sadiq, and Julius have raised questions about the effectiveness of the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya, and they've been rolling out outreaches since they came into play 2 years ago. And when we come back from the break, I shall be talking to the CEO, Jasper Rugut, and we'll have him respond to some of those questions that have emerged. So you want to stay here with us as we have that all-important conversation on the doping stain, but we want to take a short break now. We return with more insights on the scene.